Recording in progress.
Hello everyone, my name is Kenzie from class 11D, absent 18. So, today we're going to talk about life on Mars. So, is there any life on Mars? Some people may ask this question very often, but the simple answer is we don't actually know until now, until today. But there's some strong arguments that we're going to discuss today that there's actually a life on Mars, and some of the cons argument here. So first thing first, we need to talk about the existence of the key material of life itself, simply water. So, during time by time, we're going to divide Mars into 4 sections. There is actually Epoch 1 until Epoch 4. In this case, I will discuss the Epoch 2 and the Epoch 3 from Mars itself. So on Epoch 2, the mean and the peak temperature of water itself is actually below and above the freezing point of water. So that there's actually some indications that life could be lived during Epoch 2 in the surface of Mars. Some microorganisms may live in the surface and may live also below the surface. This type of environment is actually quite the same as the ice-covered lakes on Antarctica, similar on Earth itself. During Epoch 3, the mean and the peak temperature of water is actually always below freezing. So in the surface, there will be no any existence of life, but under the surface, they may have some microorganisms or simple organisms living under the Martian surface. So in this case, the Epoch 3 is actually quite similar in the Antarctica, but the surface is actually quite impossible to host some of the life similar on Antarctica itself, but there's actually kind of microorganisms that live under the Martian surface. So we move on to examine some of the photos that has been taken by the Opportunity and the Curiosity rovers on Mars itself. So some scientists examine some of the photos that has been taken. There was an indication of some lizards, mushrooms, fungi or bacteria that is live in the surface of Mars that came from the photo. But there's actually some photos that is been taken in this part. So this upper side there is actually it is actually inside of the Curiosity rover before the explorations in this left side, and in the right side this is the condition of inside of the Curiosity rover after 1089 Martian days. As we can see in the glass here, there's actually some indication that this mark here was actually some of bacteria or fungi that has been grown in outside of the Mars rover, the Curiosity rover. Before the expedition, there's no such indication of this type of mark. But some scientists believe that this mark is actually a sand or dust that is appeared on the rover itself. So it's actually not yet proven that if it's a fungi, bacteria, or just a dust or sand in the rover. And in this part, in the left below part, this is a photo taken at the Opportunity rover. In the left side, we can see that it is actually before the exploration has been started. And in the right side, it is actually after 91 Martian days. As we can see in this area right here, there's actually a black dot in this area that indicates a fungi or some bacteria that has been grown into the Opportunity rover. There's actually some photos that have been taken by the Opportunity and the Curiosity rover itself that indicate some of the fungi, some of the bacteria, and some of the lichens that been seen on photo that has been taken from the rover. So we'll move on the samples of meteorites on Mars. So there's actually 11 samples of meteorites that come from Mars and land on Earth. In this case, there's actually a meteorite called MLH0081. The meteorite is actually contains so many oxidizing material that is actually quite similar on rocks like Earth. In this case, this explains that life on Mars a long time ago is actually quite possible at that time. And after this, I will explain about the cons part in this argument. So there's actually a time of Mars is actually epoch 4. It is condition on Mars in 1.5 gigillion years ago until present or today. In this epoch 4 type, there's actually no liquid water that has been discovered on the surface, but there's actually some indications of liquid water under the surface and some microorganisms living under it. But what about the water cycle on Mars? In this case, there's actually some volcanic activities on Mars that makes the water cycles on Mars become quite impossible to be cycled because the water is currently evaporated and some of the ice that is actually on Mars become melts instantly. So yeah, there is actually no water cycle on Mars, but there were still some waters inside of the Martian surface. So there's actually quite an indication of life below the surface, but we don't actually know until now. Okay, so we're moving into the conclusion part. In the existence of water part, uh, there's actually some indication of water in Mars, and in the examine photos part, there's actually some lichens, bacteria, or fungi in the photos that have been taken by the NASA rovers. And in the meteorites part, there's actually some rich oxidizing materials from the meteorites come from Mars itself. But it is actually a meteorite that has come from a billion or a million years ago. So that is actually not valid. So in epoch 4, or as you can say today, there's actually some indication of water and little or small microorganisms below the surface of Mars. And with the water cycle part, there's actually some water cycle during the epoch 1 and epoch 2, but nowadays there's no water cycle because of the volcanic activity in Mars. And the conclusion is we don't actually know is there any life on Mars or not. And basically we need to improve our technology so that we can maybe know more about Mars itself if there's only any life in it. Thank you.